In 1620, while the Mayflower was in Provincetown, 18 of its men sailed in a small shallop, searching for a place to live. They came to present-day Eastham, where they were met by a group of Nauset. After a brief but violent encounter, the English left towards today's Plymouth. In 2020, we remember this first encounter. We explore its meanings for today and tomorrow.
The following text is an excerpt of Henry David Thoreau's book, Cape Cod. This work is based on his visit to Cape Cod in 1849. The first excerpt is taken from Chapter 3, The Plains of Nauset. When the committee from Plymouth had purchased the territory of Eastham of the Indians, it was demanded who laid claims to Billingsgate, which was understood to be all that part of the Cape north of what they had purchased. The answer was, there was not any who owned it. Then, said the committee, that land is ours. The Indians answered that it was. This was a remarkable assertion and admission. The Pilgrims appear to have regarded themselves as not any's representatives. Perhaps this was the first instance of that quiet way of speaking for a place not yet occupied, or at least not improved as much as it may be, which their descendants have practiced and are still practicing extensively. Not any seems to have been the sole proprietor of all America before the Yankees, but the history says that, when the Pilgrims had held the lands of Billingsgate many years, at length, appeared an Indian who styled himself Lieutenant Anthony, who laid claim to them, and of him they bought them. Who knows but a Lieutenant Anthony may be knocking at the door of the White House someday. At any rate, I know that if you hold a thing unjustly, there will surely to be the devil to pay at last. Thomas Prince, who was several times the governor of the Plymouth colony, was the leader of the settlement of Eastham. There was recently standing, on what was once his farm, in this town, a pear tree which is said to have been brought from England, and planted there by him, about 200 years ago. It was blown down a few months before we were there. A late account says that it was recently in a vigorous state, the fruit small but excellent, and it yielded, on an average, 15 bushels. Some appropriate lines have been addressed to it by a Mr. Heman Doane, from which I will quote, partly because they are only the only specimen of Cape Cod verse which I remember to have seen, and partly because they are not bad. 200 years have, on the wings of time, passed with their joys and woes, since thou, old tree, put forth thy first leaves in this foreign clime, transplanted from the soil beyond the sea. That exiled band long since have passed away, and still, old tree, thou standest in the place where Prince's hand did plant thee in his day, an undesigned memorial of his race, and time of those out-honored fathers, when they came from Plymouth or settled here, Higgins, Snow, Doane, and other worthy men, whose names their sons remember to revere. Old time has thinned thy boughs, old pilgrim tree, and bowed thee with the weight of many years. Yet mid the frosts of age thy bloom we see, and yearly still thy mellow fruit appears. There are some other lines which I might quote, if they were not tied to unworthy companions by the rhyme. When one ox will lie down, the yoke bears hard on him that stands up. One of the first settlers of Eastham was Deacon John Doane, who died in 1707, aged 110. Tradition says that he was rocked in a cradle several of his last years. That certainly was not an Achillean life. His mother must have let him slip when she dipped him into the liquor that was which to make him invulnerable, and he went in, heels and all. Some of the stone bounds to his farm which he set up are standing today, with his initials cut in them. The ecclesiastical history of this town interested us somewhat. It appears that they very early built a small meeting house, 20 feet square, with a thatched roof through which they might fire their muskets, of course, at the devil. In 1662, the town agreed that a part of every whale cast on shore should be appropriated for the support of the ministry. No doubt there seems to be some propriety in thus leaving the support of the ministers to Providence, whose servants they are, and who alone rules the storms. For, when few whales were cast up, they might suspect that their worship was not acceptable. The ministers must have sat upon the cliffs in every storm, and watched the shore with anxiety. And, for my part, if I were a minister, I would rather trust the bowels of the billows on the backside of Cape Cod to cast up a whale for me than to the generosity of many a country parish that I know. You cannot say of a country minister's salary commonly that it is very like a whale. Nevertheless, the minister who depended on whales cast up must have had a trying time of it. I would have rather gone to the Falkland Isles with a harpoon and done with it. Think of a whale having the breath of life beaten out of him by a storm, and dragging in over the bars and guzzles for the support of the ministry. What a constellation it must have been for him. I have heard of a minister, who had been a fisherman, being settled in Bridgewater for as long a time as he could tell a cod from a haddock. Generous as it seems, this condition would empty most country pulpits forthwith, for it is long since the fishers of men were fishermen. Also, a duty was put on mackerel here to support a free school. In other words, the mackerel school was taxed in order that the children's school might be free. In 1665, the court passed a law to inflict corporal punishment on all persons who reside in the towns of this government who denied the Scriptures. Think of a man being whipped on spring morning till he was constrained to confess that the Scriptures were true. It was also voted by the town that all persons who stand out of the meeting house during the time of divine service should be set in the stocks. It behooved such a town to see that sitting in the meeting house was nothing akin to sitting in stocks, lest the penalty of obedience to the law might be greater than that of disobedience. The following text is taken from the conclusion of Thoreau's book. The time must come when this coast will be a place of resort for those New Englanders who really wish to visit the seaside. At present it is wholly unknown to the fashionable world, and it probably will never be agreeable to them. If it merely a 10-pin alley or a circular railway, or an ocean of mint julep that the visitor is in search of, if he thinks more of the wine than the brine, as I suspect some do at Newport, I trust that for a long time he will be disappointed here. But this shore will never be more attractive than it is now. Such beaches as are fashionable here, made and unmade in a day, I may almost say, by the sea shifting its sands. Lynn and Nanskaket, this bare and bended arms that it is makes the bay which they lie so snugly. What are springs and waterfall? Here is the spring of springs, the waterfall of waterfalls. A storm in the fall or winter is the time to visit it. A lighthouse or fisherman's hut, the true hotel. A man may stand here and put all America behind him.
My name is Joanna Hollick. I'd like to share an invitation with you regarding Eastham 400's other series, the Campfire Series. The Campfire Series is a series of hour-long presentations each Sunday in July and August that delve more deeply into some of the topics we discuss here on the Sunset Series. We are happy to announce that our last campfire will be held in person. On Sunday, August 30th, the campfires will occur at the Eastham Windmill at 6 p.m. The same program that was presented on August 23rd will be shared again, featuring John Hanlon, who has led the campfire programs at the Cape Cod National Seashore for the past 20 years, and Linda Coombs of the Aquinnah Wampanoag tribe. Admission is free, but registration is required. Please sign up for these events using the form on eastham400.org. We are looking forward to these events and hope to see you there.